Hello, hi guys. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Thank you for the continuous support and engagement. We promised you guys in episode 0 that we'll have guests, and today we're bringing you the first one. In this episode, we're having a conversation with my mentor, a man with a deep passion for music and an unwavering commitment to his craft. With a heart firmly rooted in the Lord, he has dedicated himself to the art of music, carving an impressive path as a songwriter, composer, producer, and an exceptional arranger of melodies. So also has graced the world with his talents through the incredible array of studio recordings, spanning across genres. His musical journey has been a harmonious blend of gospel, contemporary a cappella, hip-hop, R&B, and dance, just to mention a few. His dedication to the game has yielded him a remarkable ability to elevate the performances of artists, making them sound absolutely at their peak, their best, and has earned himself the respect and admiration of countless peers and collaborators. And so, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this as much as we did, and be sure to join the conversation by dropping your thoughts or questions in the comment section. This is
Today we are talking about inspiration. We are talking about the role of influence when it comes to inspiration. So let's start off with defining. What is inspiration?
Inspiration is one of those things, man, that you know what it is,
Sure.
but you just can't define it.
Yeah.
I think it's like something that stimulates something inside you, right? Or excites or energizes or triggers. Those are the words that come to mind. Could be something, could be someone, could be an event that just triggers something in you
Yeah.
to do something. And
A lot of some things there.
yeah. So if I were to sum it up, it's like a stimulating
Sure.
type of energy
Yeah.
that compels you to do whatever you want to do, either better or differently.
Sure. So it's like a prompting
Yeah.
thing. Mangali, so in your experience of artistry, what is inspiration for you specifically, not on a general scope now?
Because it's difficult because does it find you or do you find it?
That's step 2.
That's step 2. I know. I'm just moving fast. No, it's not really defined it clearly.
Okay,
Again, it's
okay.
that thing that stimulates. You could be in the most absurd places as ever. I usually get inspired in the shower. Well, that's where I have the conversations with God, and then just start doing a rhythmic beat, and then think of harmonies on top of that, or even a crazy idea of, as far as, listen, for example, the virtual choir. Virtual choir I was just watching Jacob Collier, and he was doing a Moon River at that point in time, and then Eric Whittaker also did, and I was like, I want to do something similar.
Sure.
And I got stimulated, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. So for me, that's my definition of inspiration.
Okay, so I feel like you're kind of touching on the next part then, which is, let's start off, before we ask how do you find art inspiration, can you find inspiration?
You tell
or
us.
does it find you?
In your experience. In your
Ooh,
experience as
not
an
you
artist.
turning my questions on me.
You as an artist, you're also an artist and a creative.
So I think it's both. And I think, it might be different for each artist. I think we've established that artistry is very unique to the artist itself, or the artist themselves. I think for me, it's been a function of both. Sometimes you're just there enjoying Jacob Collier, and then he does something, you're like, oh, this is making me thinking of unfolding it in this way. Like recently we went to a concert, Committed 3.0, and from that, like afterwards, I remember you and I being like, oh my goodness, maybe we could do this and then add this and then and that we weren't going there looking for inspiration, but like we just stumbled upon it. Yeah. And I think other times you kind of have to pursue it. I think in the last episode we were talking about how when I was writing a play and I kind of had like writer's block, and I had to be like, God, like I just can't move forward, and I had to pursue inspiration. So I think it's a function of both.
How do you pursue it, though? I mean, now I'm asking you more
Ooh.
questions.
Okay. How do you pursue inspiration? What inspires you? So I know for me, I love nature. I'm very, because specifically it's because it reminds me that God is the author of artistry, he's the author of creativity. Because you look at nature and you're like, if there was nothing, I would have never thought to make that look like this, you know?
Sure.
And so being in natural spaces for me, I know if I go to a park, if I go to a reserve, my friend always says, you don't like nature, you like curated nature, which I have come to accept to be true, because nature is too unpredictable for me, okay? The Amazon looks good in pictures, but I will not go there. I'm not trying to stumble on those snakes, but the point is to say, being in nature for me is a very inspiring space. So that's an example. Also spending time with friends, with unlocking my mind, anything that makes my mind calm and like embrace an experience, I tend to find a lot of inspiration in that. So it could be I'm hanging out with you guys and you guys have a conversation and it makes you go, oh, that's actually a concept I can explore in a poem. So let me actually go write in this thing. So I think for me, pursuing art is going to the space, or pursuing inspiration rather, is going into the spaces that make my mind calm. Yeah.
For you, sir?
What is it for you guys?
For me, it's similar nature
Sure.
sometimes. But for me, it's everything, right? I was once told that some of the best philosophers used to just go outside, sit down, do nothing,
Sure.
and just watch, and things would come to them that way. So I do that sometimes. I will drive up to, especially in Cape Town, there's a lot of mountains. So I'll drive up to one of my favorite spots in the southern suburbs, well, more peninsula side. I sit there and I look at the area, I look at the cars passing, I look at the waves, I look at everything, and then something will come to me. Also, if I'm looking for specific inspiration to make music, I listen to music. I listen to people who do it better than me, and it's a lot of people who do it better than me. And I sit down and I listen, and I sit there. I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go. Especially when I experience something that is good, that is amazing.
Sure.
I mean, I went to the same concert the night before, and when you go to those type of events, the first thing you want to do when you get home is work, right?
And we worked.
That is true.
Right. So, and it's interesting because it doesn't have to be someone making music that inspires me. Everyone who's doing something at a high level, doing it well, whether it's acting, whether it's playing sports. If I look at someone who's just brilliant at what they're doing, I get inspired
Sure.
to take the same work ethic and put it back into my work. So I think everything can probably inspire you.
Yeah.
Like everything can, for me rather, can trigger, me to go work and do something.
I'm interested in this trigger. Tell us of an experience that you have of something, the most unexpected trigger for something that probably would not relate to that at all.
I wouldn't say unexpected, but I mean, I wrote a song about nature once, and I was after gym. I went up to top of a mountain, and I was sitting there, and you sit there, you look at how nature works together. Okay. There's a bug eating another bug, but before that bug ate that bug was probably chewing on a leaf.
Sure.
And then that leaf was like a wind was blowing that leaf left to right? And then the wind is gone now, and the clouds are gathering, and then I drive home, then it starts raining, and then it's sunny again, and like all of these things are working well together. So I sat down as a Friday evening, later on after the morning, I was sitting there like, oh, this is beauty in my eyes. The works of your hands. I marvel at the seamless cohesion, the unity of nature. How fair a beautiful field of view. I'm trying to describe what I saw and put it into music. So, or sometimes I go to a market on a Sunday morning and there's a guy there who's just playing his guitar. No one is tipping him. And people are walking past, no one is putting anything in there.
Yeah.
And then I walk past and I come back 2 hours later, the guy's still playing. Why hasn't he given up?
Sure.
well, why does it matter so much for him to keep playing? And then it tells me, actually, why would you give up?
Yeah.
Why don't you keep playing? Why don't you keep doing? So it's those type of triggers. You know, you never expect it, but something when you're conscious in life. Sometimes we cruise. We're just coasting through life, which is okay sometimes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sometimes when you're conscious and you're driving or you're walking, you see something like, actually,
Yeah.
I can translate this to something about my life. So there's always everything, right? There's no specific event that is unexpected, because I think a lot of them are unexpected.
Okay.
So now we've all touched on being, in some shape or form, being inspired by other forms of artistry, right? So now let's say you're not inspired by something that's an object, it's literally someone else's creation. How do you toe the line between allowing their work to influence yours through inspiration and you just mimicking someone else's work because you admire it so much?
That's a tough one. You struggle a lot with that, eh?
I want to say, mimic first,
Sure.
if it helps you.
Okay.
When we were growing up, we used to, when they're teaching us how to draw,
Yeah.
we used to trace over
Yes.
someone else's work to learn the technique, maybe to train your muscle memory, maybe to just see how much shading to put there if you want to create a certain effect. If you want to make the nose pop out, where do you color,
Yeah.
and we were doing that by tracing and copying. And then from drawing a frog, when you get home now you can draw the head of a horse, but now you're using the same type of way that you learned.
Sure.
So I think mimicking, replicating at first is sometimes necessary, because that's how you think like that person.
Okay.
But then now you have to take that further and then like translate it in your own way.
Sure.
And that for me becomes now the inspiration, the influence, the referencing, if I can use a more technical term. Then now I'm saying, okay, fine, I've seen how this person makes their music. I've got my own interpretation of my own music that I want to make, but let me use some of those lessons that I learned from observing them, and then translate them into my own thing.
So are you saying like use whatever work you're referencing as a means to an end? So basically, like, if you need to mimic it to get to your end goal or finding your way to say it through your own voice, then do it that way?
Treat it as a teacher.
Okay.
I sit down, I watch Jacob Collier, and I feel like I'm in a lecture.
Sure.
Okay, sure.
You see, so teach me, and I listen to someone's music, and I'm like, okay, I'm learning. You are my teacher.
Yeah.
When I go home, I will first try and rework what I learned from you, and then I'll apply it.
Sure.
Then, when we were growing up, we used to be taught maths, which is 1 + 1 = 2. And then when we grew up with it, they said, okay, I applied mathematics, which is now, if you have that apple, what else do you need to get 2 apples?
Sure.
Then because you learned 1 + 1, you now know, okay, I have to find another apple,
Gotcha.
then I'll have 2 apples,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you were taught by listening and hearing the music. Now apply it. I've got these feelings. I want to make a frustrating type of sound, or an angry type of sound, or a joyous type of sound. Now, how can I take that one song I heard from that person and use those techniques and use that way and incorporate my way of doing things, and then come up with now my way without necessarily replicating anymore your work?
And this is quite interesting because it speaks to something that we really do struggle about. We do not go past beyond the means of an end.
Yeah.
We get comfortable with
The replication. Sure.
and then we put it out there as if it is ours. Ellen White says something, I just want to quote it.
While you're looking for it, that frustrates me.
Because I was gonna go into that, but let's do the quote. Yeah.
To Ellen White, go Review and Herald, written April 6, 1886. Do not borrow the productions of other men's brains and pens and recite them as a lesson, but make the most of the talents and brain power that God has given you. I think from just Landiteto and Ellen White, she mentions that yes, it's good that you recite. I guess in the biblical perspective, you'd say experience ka Abraham and all of those things, jalo njalo. But then when we come to our creative space, yes, recite, replicate, but then now apply what God has given you to further whatever that you have as an individual. Like you said, it's very, very, very frustrating. Now I think the question is, where do you toe the line between replicating and inspiration or referencing? Let's put it in that sense. How do you properly reference? I don't know if whether I'm clear.
No,
Yeah.
I hear you, but I want to say maybe three things.
Yeah.
I always think I'm numbering my points, but I always go over.
It's the theme
But
of the
nature of-
space.
it's the theme of the space.
But maybe let's do the easy answer.
Okay.
If you tell me to make umpaqanga music, there are certain elements and themes of umpaqanga music. The bass does something, the lead vocal does something, and then people respond if you are working with people. Back in the day, there was a nice genre of South African jazz called Marabi, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And everyone would arrange and compose within that genre space. Now, if you come to me and say, hey, please make a Marabi piece or a Mpaqanga piece, I will go to the principles of that genre and then I will take from them and I'll make a song. Now, I haven't necessarily replicated, but there are principles of that genre.
Okay.
And then within those principles, I'll then use my own melody, my own chords.
Sure.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
If I'm making a certain type of classical, country music, southern gospel music, contemporary gospel music, hip hop, jazz, there are principles, right?
Yes.
Now, where it gets frustrating to me is when a young person comes to me and they say, hey, I heard this group singing, please make me a song that sounds like that group, right? Or when 5 people send me songs, which happens, 5 people send me songs and you would think all 5 were written by the same person.
Sure.
But what has happened is that, one person is anchoring the industry
Yeah.
or that location, and everyone wants to sound like
That person.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me because some of these people are younger people, and I'm thinking, man, if you could learn how that person writes that music, and then take your own melodies and your own ideas and use the principle back to point 1. Okay, so this is how the alto moves and the second alto moves. This is how the soprano moves. This is how the bass moves, and leave it there. Now come back. What is your melody?
Yeah.
What is your bass line? What is your chord? Now, when you write your own melody, then you can go back to the principle of what inspired you.
Yeah.
Right? And then apply it for yourself.
Sure.
So, principle is fine. And we can all operate within a certain field of principle, call it genre.
Yes.
But be yourself in that genre.
Okay.
Be yourself in that space.
Yeah.
And be happy to be different in that space as well.
I think there's also a fear to push bounds, especially because each of us are speaking here from being in a conservative Christian denomination, Adventism to be specific. There are limitations to what is acceptable art, generally speaking,
Fair.
when
That's
it comes to Adventism, and I think this will be the case with other, denominations or other sects or groups, whatever. So I think people might have the fear of pushing bounds to the point where my art is now not acceptable. And so you end up mimicking what is the model of acceptability, and then you recreate things instead of being like, okay, artistry is about being creative, vele. So it's okay for me to take and push bounds, because sometimes we limit ourselves. Sometimes we're like, well, the bounds of this genre are this, so I can't add, you know what I mean, flares from this and this and that. So how do you speak then to a person who's like, but I want my art to be acceptable, and I know Soso's music is acceptable, so I just want to make what Soso makes.
Let me tell you, my idea on that is that 400 years ago, there was a new person with a new sound, and everyone replicated and followed, right? Now, 400 years later, be that new person with your own sound, teach the audience.
Okay.
Maybe train the church's ear as well, and say, guys, within these principles, which I respect, we can still push it to this, and try and get, others to listen and accept your sound as well, right? So dare to be new, dare to be to come up with something different, to be fresh, and dare to train your audience.
Yeah.
To catch up to your way of thinking as well.
That's
right?
quite interesting. The training of the audience. It sounds like it comes from always reaching beyond that which is bound to be limits, and you have to constantly do it and put yourself out there until they get used to it. Is that how it would work?
We have cases of this, guys. There were times where certain songs were not being sung at church.
Sure.
Songs we are referring to now as amakoras.
Sure.
Good afternoon. We were all singing the classic way of singing, as written by our colleagues in the Baptist Church, our colleagues in the other Christian denominations who have borrowed us music, which we use every Sabbath, right?
Yes.
And then Africans decided, actually, I want to sing a song like this afternoon. And then you teach everyone that song, and then people started learning them. And then people maybe who slept many years ago, if they wake up and arrive now in the church afternoon program, they're like, okay, this is a bit different, but this is how we do things now. And in 10 years' time, I would have taught the church my hymns. In 15 years' time, someone else would have taught the church their hymns, and that will be that way of thinking. So, dare to teach, dare to train, and dare to understand that there can be a shift in the way that we do things. Again, share that music.
I don't even know when this thing stopped.
Oh no!
I do not even know when it stopped.
Oh, we can use the sound.
We can use the sound. So I had a question. Question was around this thing of being original. Why is it difficult to be original, and why is it easier to cover? I mean, I suffer from that personally, as I do a lot of covers, and I guess my reasoning is that I'm still trying to find my name, or find my space. But a lot of people now are hopping onto the trend of covering instead of being original, which speaks to this thing of training your audience of this new sound that you want to introduce.
It's easier to cover because that's what's working outside. So if an artist is successful, you cover them, you hope that you will sound as good. I just think we should dare to be original, right? Because that artist, that is their original idea. What is your original idea, right?
Yeah.
Sell that to us, like play it for us. We need to hear, and I like the balance that I see nowadays is that many groups that started off covering, they are now getting that courage to start giving us that original music.
Sure.
And some people may like it at first, some won't like it, but before there was precedence, there was an original idea, an original person. I think more and more people need to be original. One of the most impressive people that we know now, Jacob Collier, started with covers.
Sure, yeah.
And then became original, and it still blew our mind, right? But it's that courage. Be original, try it, attempt it, and share that music with the people. So, I mean, why not be original? Will be that question. Like, why not be yourself and show that to us?
It's tough in the church.
Okay.
So artistry reclaimed in the church, in the sense, Yokubana, we want to be as expressive and as deliberate in the church, but it's easy. It's as if I don't even know how to explain it. We lose identity by not doing what already exists. Is it because now, we talked about, I guess, in the previous episode, whereby now we've shifted the post of having Christ as the center, something that I discovered is that even if everyone were to try to be like Christ, everyone will still have their individuality within themselves, because that's how vast he is, his nature of being God. And now if I'm trying to be like Usos, there can only be one source. and then everyone will try and be like ourselves, and there's like everyone is still the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I answered myself at the same time. But your thoughts on it?
I think also like just to piggyback on that, within again coming back to the whole Christian conservative spaces and the culture of Adventism, because I'm speaking from that point of view, it's very much let's stick to the norm. Why are you trying to add new things? We always use the term new light like in a derogatory way, but who's in a new light? You know what I mean? Like there's a and while to an extent I get you don't want people to bring theology that's not founded in scripture, that's fair. Exactly. But I'm just saying generally when someone brings a new idea, there isn't an atmosphere of let's explore it. It's new, it's foreign, get out of here, you know? And when you grow up in that kind of space, you tend not to know how to be yourself because there's a defined way to be perceived as righteous, and it's only one. If you're a lady, you're wearing a long skirt, you have an afro, you know what I mean? That's how to look righteous. If you're a guy, you wear what me and my friends call prison truth jackets, like this, like you know, like that's how you look righteous. And so
but being creative though?
Being creative is you must sing like King's Heralds or you know what I mean? Yeah. And so there are these defined ways of looking like Christ, and then as a result, we think anything that's outside of those prescribed ways is not good. And so I think that's why people struggle to be original, because originality is to an extent demonized, you know?
I think we need to understand as well that the norm was someone's idea and someone's culture.
Okay.
I think when we understand that, we start realizing that the Adventist church can be kind as well with the guidelines that they provide. But I believe that they, contrary to popular belief, they're not forcing everyone to follow a certain culture from A to Z. They say these are the guidelines of what we think is acceptable. Africans, how do you interpret it? Indians, how do you interpret it? North Americans, how do you interpret it? Latin Americans, how do you interpret it? And that is where we need to find, how are we going to look within the guidelines and be African? I'll make an example. A songwriter which I respect in the church, Fisani, I think his name is Masinga, who works with Reality 7. I mean, he came in, he was writing music in isiZulu. Rhythmically, it was, the rhythm that is very common in that Mpaqanga type of sound, that very expressive, very rhythmic, some polyrhythms, call and response. And he came and he trained the audience that this is also us, and this is within our bounds, and we are spreading the word, sounding like Africans in an African language. And then when we all consumed Reality 7 for the first time in the early 2010, 2011, it was different to a lot of us. Because maybe you've heard Ladysmith Black Mambas, or maybe but you've never heard someone singing, excuse me, like these Christian lyrics, the Bible in this way. I mean, people hate it, maybe some people rejected it, but years passed and a lot of Zulu, Xhosa, African people were thinking, actually, we like this, and you see more and more people singing in that African way, in their African language and interpreting that. So to get back to my original point, that norm was someone's culture many years ago. And the guidelines of Adventism, I think, allow for Africans to find themselves within those guidelines. You're not throwing things away. You're not saying,
do away with all of that.
No, you're saying that within this, I can be myself. That's the challenge. That's a challenge for musicians.
Yes.
That's a challenge for creatives in general.
Yeah.
Within this, can you be yourself?
Yeah. It's important to distinguish what is, I think, especially as Christian creatives, what is cultural and what is biblical. Because we derive principles from the Bible, but there aren't prescriptions on these principles can only look like this. So if I want to make alternative Christian music and you want to make a cappella and you know what I mean, you want to make rhythm and blues, we can all apply the principles from the same book, but it doesn't have to look the same. But if we're all specifically guided by one mode or one depiction of what culture might uphold in a given point in time, then that's when I think we end up feeling the pressure to mimic, you know? And so, yeah, biblical principle over conforming to cultural norms. Because again, you're right in saying that Adventism has guidelines, ne? And I think it can be easy to see, for it to seem like I'm saying Adventism is doing it. We have a lot of creative individuals within Adventism. We have a lot of space held for people that are creative within Adventism. What I'm speaking to is what tends to be prevalent, you know, and that is upholding of cultural norms. And so I think it's valuable to see it through, more so through guidelines than like specific, like this is what it looks like.
I think we should give flowers to the community at large and their progress is that they're becoming more, I wouldn't say susceptible.
Sure.
Well, the principles have not changed. That's quite interesting. The principles have not changed, but the people are allowing themselves now to be molded by the principles. They are no more breaking themselves against the principles, which is, I guess, why we're still here, because we're trying to speak to other people who have not yet, I wouldn't say, seen the light, but to understand that, man, this is a safe space. You can literally be able to reach God now as authentically as you are, maybe as an African, as you also mentioned, as an Indian, as a North American, as a Japanese or whatever.
Sure.
And then now going back to that conversation, inspiration. I think it is very important in getting inspiration that eventually the end goal is for you to be original, because this thing is like, well, it's like a race. You get inspired, you inspire someone else.
That is true.
I think, but let's touch on you now being the inspiration on someone else. I mean, fortunately for me, I eventually got to sit and have a conversation with my mentor, who's also right. He used to inspire me, but now I work with him.
And he doesn't inspire you anymore. That has long since changed.
Okay, he still inspires me. A bounce of ideas. Conversing with Ukwai, she inspired me. We're childhood friends and all of that. But now opens up the room of collaboration now.
Sure.
And also, I mean, we're sitting here. We're three individual people, but all three of us have intersecting inspirations, but still maintaining our individuality.
Sure.
I think that's a beautiful thing. We want to edify people, creatives, even outside of the Christian space, even though, yes, we've set up this platform as a way of just speaking to us, but also we wanted to extend it out furthermore. Let's talk about some practical referencing guidelines that we can give. If you can give us some practical referencing guidelines without having to find yourself again repeating something that someone is doing, like things that can be in exercises apart from replicating.
Okay. I don't think anyone has woken up a single day in their life and saying, hey, let me go and inspire people. Right?
I mean, you never know now.
Maybe some people wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go and inspire people now. You know, you are yourself, hopefully.
Yeah.
And hopefully by your actions, others are inspired.
Yes.
I should hope so. More technically referencing, as you ask, I think for me, the first step is listening, right? Listening. Listen to a lot of music similar to what you want to make. I had a challenge. A friend of mine was pursuing rap at after school, and they needed help with beats. I had never made hip-hop beats before. I sat for 2 weeks listening, like, oh, this is how they do it. These are the elements. There was an exercise we used to do in a course called the Appreciation of Music and the Appreciation of Music, where you listen to music of different time periods, and you had to sit down. Which instrument are you picking up there? Okay, those are the strings. Okay, those are the horns. Okay, when they start the song, they don't bombard the whole song immediately with horns and cymbals, and they introduce it with maybe a string melody.
Sure.
Then maybe the piccolo or the flute comes in there. Now you're setting the mood. And then after a bit of introducing the themes, then they come maybe with the rest of the string section.
Sure.
And they come with, but you see what you're doing. You're listening to someone else's work and you're tracking how they're doing. Maybe I don't write plays, I don't make music, but how do they introduce characters? Sure. You watch a play like, is everyone already here? And you assume everyone knows who. No.
Sure.
Actually, the main person walks down the stairs. And that's how we introduce them. And then they greet this person. Okay, so this will be the house. So you say, when I write my own play, when I write my own music, this is the principle. It seems that I mustn't bombard people at first. Let me first introduce the theme.
Just
all right.
To pause.
Technical referencing, man. So while you're listening to that song, you look at how they're painting it. Okay, intro, first verse, bridge, chorus, second verse, bridge, maybe something else, interlude, maybe end section, and then conclusion. And you're listening, and then now you're, okay, so this is how nice songs are made. Then you go and make your own nice song. Intro, verse, bridge, chorus. You see, you're not necessarily copying that person, but you've learned principles. And those principles maybe are not the same. Maybe another person doesn't do intro. Maybe others don't do solos. But the more music you are listening to, the more you're like, okay, this is how, these are the principles. Yeah. And then there are chords, melodies, progressions. You hear a nice progression. You went to a committed 3.0. Maybe you were recording some audios. And because they sing hymns, you want to sing hymns as well. Yeah. So you listen, okay, which chords sound nice with hymns? And then you hear, when a melody was doing this and a bass was doing this, this is what the inner parts were doing.
Sure.
My melody is doing this, my bass is doing this, maybe my inner parts can do this. And then you find, that is how to sound like committed. And then you're like, okay, fine, now let me put it to my thing. Mm-hmm. And then you put in your little tweaks. Maybe alto 1 must join the melody on my version, and maybe alto 2 can go with the lower registers on my version. But you still listened, learned, and now you're applying. So I think that's how I would sum up referencing. Listen, learn, apply. Listen, learn from what you're referencing, and apply that. In other genres of music, you go even further, you sample. You see, that means that I've heard something, I like it, I want it in my music. Okay. Then you literally take it, and then you either slow it down, speed it up. Some people just take it as it is, you get sued. But sometimes you slow it down, you speed it up, you chop it up, you repeat certain parts, and then you record it and you release it as your own. Hopefully you register everyone's work and you clear it with everyone. But you've sampled, you've referenced.
Sure.
So listen, learn, listen, learn, apply.
All right. I'd like us to end off on speaking as, again, because we're speaking to and we're speaking as Christian artists. Are there limitations to what we can and should allow to influence and inspire us as Christian artists? Whether you're an artist who's creating for Christians or you're just a Christian who's creating.
I love the rest of that question, because I was going to ask it back to you, because you are making Christian music, but at the same time, you are a Christian making music. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll take it further. You are a human being who is a Christian, living a life in a world that is not exactly Christian. You are influenced, whether implicitly or explicitly, by various things already. If I walk out here, I see something that scares me. Mm-hmm. It's going to influence how I walk around this area again. That's life. This is now that's outside. Me. This is the world, right?
I got mugged. That's me.
You see,
Manga's still very traumatized by this.
Exactly.
PTSD.
Now, when you make music, maybe that's gonna be influencing your music.
No, it did. Actually, when I'd arranged Undi Katalelu years, I mean, there's a shorter version now, but for the longer version, there's a part in the middle that is so dark. When I listened to it, I cried. Where literally my emotions. I was asking a question whereby the songs I was like, Upi Utiko, where are you, God? I am dying now.
Yeah.
And you are allowing to see this. And it translates to the sonic, the sound, it translates sonically. And it scared me as I'm arranging it. I'm like, should I put it out there? I omitted it, but then it's going to come back later on. But yeah, it's a thing. It exists. It exists.
And that's exactly it. You have no choice sometimes what influences you, right? And that's how I think about music. When I'm making music for Christians, or when I'm making Christian music, and I'm cheating here because I'm not being technical. Maybe we can be technical in the second part of the answer, but not being technical, Christians live in a world that is outside of Christian influences, that is outside the moral code of Christianity. And Christians are affected by a lot of external forces which don't really conform to the warmth sometimes the uncomfortable nature of Christianity, right? And you are doing yourself a big, what is it? Is it disjustice? Injustice, thank you, English. By limiting your influence, because and the moment you start opening yourself up to writing music from a point of no limits, also you can't even predict how Christians will react to the same music.
That's true.
And where it will hit them when they hear it, and how maybe God will work with them from hearing your music. So I don't think we should overthink bounds and limits. Let's make music. And do you want me to be technical and speak about genres which should influence or not influence? I don't want to, right?
Yeah.
Because that's another sticky conversation.
But
even there, man, if there are people who enjoy a certain type of music, there's a guy called he does Christian rap, right? And if I sit down with my cousins who were born in 2002, 2003, and I play them, a certain type of gospel music, let's play heritage singers, if we're mentioning people's names. I'm gonna sit in there, I'll be driving on the N2, they're gonna doze off. And then if I play, let's say this guy who does this Christian rap, they're gonna bump their heads up and they're gonna listen to this guy's experience, talking about where God reached him when he was doing that. And they're like, okay. And then you're gonna start hearing them singing the hook, which is talking about, let's say the guy wants to la because yes, no belling, I'm regardless of what I'm going through in Janja. Like, okay. And then 2 weeks later you bump into the young lad, he's singing that hook, Jesus, blah, blah, blah. Like, because that's how the content reaches him. Because that is what his ear that's what his palate is used to.
Yeah.
So there's another song that people have been sharing it. It's a nice mid-tempo house song, All in You. Another one is Give Me Jesus, and all. In the morning, and this is their reflection. They are not in the church, right? They are reflecting in their own way about Christ. And you may be sitting wherever you are sitting. If I'm driving on the N2 down to Grahamstown, I probably am not listening to heritage singers because I'm going to fall asleep. Beautiful music, but not for a long drive. Yeah. Maybe I want to put in something else. And if the lyrical content for that also reaches me, I don't think there's a problem. So I think let's push the boundaries, man. Let's debate it.
Yeah.
Obviously, let's debate it. We can debate, are you going to come to church during divine service and drop a hip-hop beat? Different discussion.
Yeah.
Are you gonna come through an afternoon program, put a DJ in and sing Give Me Jesus, playing mid-tempo house music inside church? Maybe not. Maybe there's a setting for that. But I just think creatively, don't hold yourself in. Then we can discuss another time which settings you can play certain music, which settings you maybe shouldn't be playing certain music. But I think in terms of creating that music, just
go ahead.
Because
that is an entirely different conversation altogether, right? It's the question of where is my artistry supposed to be displayed, and what artistry do I create or do I,
To curate for that
exactly.
specific. Yeah.
Those things are not the
Sphere.
same. The
Yes.
fact that I cannot sing my Christian rap in Konzweni does not mean I'm wrong
For doing it.
to begin with, Yeah, I think for me specifically, it's how you perceive your relationship with Christ will dictate how you interact with everything else. So as a Christian creative, if your relationship with Christ is so rigid in the terms of you want it to look like however you think people want it to look, then you're going to limit yourself in everything else as well, because you're limited within your relationship within how you engage with him too.
I love that.
So if you navigate life with Christ, then everything else, you're not gonna feel as constrained when it comes
love
to
that.
allowing what word am I looking for? Determining what influences you.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it filters through Christ, right?
Yes.
The first time I heard a song that I wrote being sung by someone else was this year, actually. And it was inspired by a tragedy. A friend of mine had told me that she had been assaulted, and that was a very painful experience. And so I wrote a song for her, and it ended up being sung by a girl in a play that I wrote, which basically spoke to, there's certain words you can't say on YouTube. So I'm trying to feel like I'm trying to find like different ways of like saying, but basically it was speaking to, overcoming that kind of being a survivor in that kind of situation. So the person sang the song, and that song was inspired by pain, but because I engaged with that pain through the lens of Christ, through the lens of my relationship with Christ, it didn't necessarily take away from the Christ-centricness of the piece of art.
Yes.
And so, okay, go ahead.
Something you once mentioned before, I think we can use it as a conclusion.
Sure.
That when you come to Christ or you approach Christ, it doesn't mean that's where, the come as you are perspective for Christ doesn't mean that
you must
will
stay as
end
you are.
there as you are when He has put you kulandaweni ngaphezulu. I think that journey becomes native for each individual. We can never sit down and dictate people's individuals' journey in that case. So come as you are, but at the end of the day, Christ will not leave you as you were.
Sure.
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks from your side?
Man, just, express yourself. I love that relationship element to it with God. When you know how secure you are with your relationship with God, and no one is gatekeeping your experience with God, just express yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
And if people don't want to listen to your music in a certain setting, take it out of there, play it for people in a different setting. It's endless now. You don't even need permission to release music now. You just do it through a digital distributor. It's on all digital stores by end of the week or 2 weeks sometimes. Just do it. Express yourself. Write, share, be original. Just put yourself out there. Be vulnerable. I want to hear that. I want to hear every single type. I'm that one person who listens to everything. Everything. There's no genre I don't listen to. The extremes, I listen to them. I sit there and I listen to them because
not the extremes
the
now.
Extremes, I'm telling you now. There are situations where I work in tech where I'll be sitting there debugging code and I'll play metal music.
Wow.
Because for that situation, I need a certain type of inspiration. I feel like I have to fight something. I have to be relentless in how I'm doing this thing. I'll play music that is close to that sort of like relentless expression, right? The extremes, I will sit down and listen to the exact opposite of that. Sit down, listen to some Beethoven, listen to some Chopin playing piano, listen to two extremes because there's a time for that. On my way home now, I know I'll be listening to classical music because I want to end of the day slightly differently. But my point is, I don't care how you do it, what genre you are doing. Come and share. From a Christian point of view, if they don't want you to play it inside church, still share it. they'll listen to it in their cars or in their homes.
They do.
We are still fighting
And
the
they
church
do.
thing, but they will listen to it. Do not stop. And also dare to be original, man. Like, we want to hear original thoughts. We want to hear original music. We want to consume. For one, I want to read different content in church that is written by South Africans. I want to see what some of these young kids are. I want their stories to be shared, good children's story. I want to be watching different type of content on these channels that we have that is produced and made by South Africans. And I want to listen to original music that is written by South African. Hey, I want to sing a hymnal sometimes of music that is written by people that I know who have experiences closer to me, and within these guidelines can express themselves in an original way that we can all be inspired by. So if I had to conclude in one sentence, just get up and do it and be original and just share. We want to consume.
That's it.
I don't know what more people want.
I don't want
There's nothing more to give you.
people want. Yeah. Thank you, Buddha.
And that's a wrap on another episode of Artistry Reclaimed. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. But before we say goodbye, we'd like to give a big shout out to the talented individuals who helped make this episode possible. Our theme music was produced and arranged by the musically talented Sonwabiso Damana, with amazing vocals by Dante Sound. Our infographics were expertly crafted by Dumugui Ngwane. Also, a special thank you to Dr. Yada Davis for providing us with a stunning location to record this episode. And as always, we are grateful for you, our amazing listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share the podcast with your friends and family. And until next time, keep creating for the creator. Goodbye.